Good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Friedman Quinn with the library, and I'd like to welcome you all here this morning for another SPED NET program. And just to remind you that the library has a whole host of other programs each month. And if you look at our website on our events page, you'll find out all about them, all different topics. So I hope to see you again at another library program. And now we're going to have Eve Kessler from SPEDNet tell you about today's program and introduce our speaker.
Hi, everybody. So we have had this topic before about being on the same page with your partner. And people are always talking about how difficult that is, raising a typical kid and especially raising a kid with special needs. So we asked Dave to do it again. Dave Sylvestro was the school psychologist at Eagle Hill when my son went there long, long ago, and at the Southport School, and he runs our support groups, which are a fantastic thing. And he's our favorite speaker. We have a few more presentations coming up. The next one in March is about transitioning to college and post-secondary challenges and legal issues with this amazing attorney who does special ed and criminal law and has ADD himself and always talks about how that impacts his work. And then we are having one in New Canaan. We've never had a program in New Canaan at the new library there about the power of validation. And that should be interesting too in March. And the rest of our programs haven't been set up yet. So make sure everybody has a handout in the back. And thank you so much, Dave.
Thank you for coming. Better today than a couple of days ago with the snow. But I think it's awful pretty and awful nice. Just a thing about SPEDNet, Eve, and this organization is one of my favorite organizations to participate in anything that they have with. They have phenomenal speakers and are a great resource for parents. When we decided to start the group, what was it? Is it 2 years ago, maybe even at this? It's 3 years ago. What it was is it gives parents an opportunity to come to a group and find that they are not alone in dealing with the issues that they are dealing with their kids, either blending a family that has neurotypical kids in it, then neurodiverse kids in it, or talking about parenting and issues between parents and issues between finding the right path to go with our kids. The opportunity to have a group of people to talk with. I am there and I am essentially window dressing because the way that the parents are for one another and the support that they give to one another and the help that they give to one another is really absolutely inspiring. So, in fact, the last time we had a meeting, there was a couple at the group who started to talk about how difficult it was for them to parent their child who happens to be on the spectrum and just being on the same page with one another. And Eve said, I think we should do a talk about that. And we're going to do this just today. So what we're going to talk about here is, again, what are some of the issues that are present in families of kids who have neurodiverse and neurotypical kids that make it way more challenging than we think it should be for parents to find out kind of the common ground in the way that they should address their kids and work with their kids and help their kids grow. And one of the complicating things is, why? People in this room are educated, they're successful, they have friends, they've confronted problems before, and work them out. They've demonstrated we have demonstrated flexibility and resourcefulness. Why is it a problem with our kids that we get so vexed by what to do, that we have our own ways of thinking that this is the best way that we respond when our kids are in this particular mood, and then our spouse feels differently? How can things get so different and so complicated to people who are already good agents with their lives? Well, there's a gazillion reasons. And I have to tell you that most of the things in this presentation have come from the work that I've been lucky enough to be able to do as a school psychologist at the Eagle Hills in Greenwich and in Southport, that we have parent groups. And the parent groups are two of them. The one that met during the day was when moms would usually come. And then we had a special group at once a month at nighttime for dads. And listening to both sides of that, the moms talk about what it's like to be the mother, the primary care parent, and what their responsibilities are and what their challenges are, and compare that to what the dads talked about once a month on Tuesdays, and their role as sort of the alternate parent, primary care parent, and what it's like for them to come into a game that's already going on and they don't know all of the rules necessarily. And so what this is really a compilation of that information. And this talk is really interactive. If people have questions or comments, and I'm going to ask you for comments and things, please participate, because that's going to make it richer in much the same way that the people who talk in a group provide information for other parents that is really valuable and poignant. That's going to be helpful. Yes. What have I done? Is a little droopy? Oh.
If you're going to take questions during
Oh, good idea. Okay. All right. What we're going to talk about today are changing. I'm going to be moving. It is really hard for me to stand behind, as well, you can imagine. I talk, but I'm going to try to stay on mic. If I'm not on mic, could somebody just raise their hand and say, get back to the mic more? We're going to talk about our changing roles as parents, because as our kids grow, obviously our responsibilities are different. The way that we are nurturing our kids is different. The goals and the way that we're nurturing our kids are different. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Then the different roles of the primary care parent and the alternate primary care parent. And then the characteristic of our neurodiverse kids that can make parenting a challenge. If I open that up right now, we would be able to talk about that for 45 minutes. We're going to sort of do a little summation of that, and you guys add to the things that I'm going to say, but just to do that. And that hopefully will give us a little bit of a reassurance that would say, oh, well, that's why this is so hard. That's why this is more of a challenge than it is for other kids. That when we're in a grocery line, for example, and there's a kid in the cart in front of us, and the kid asks his mother, oh, can I have some gum? And the mom says no, and it ends like that, as opposed to with our kids. And if that happens, we have to plan. Do I say no right away? Do I say, well, in a minute, we'll see how things go now, or do we do other things like that? It's just more complicated. And then we're talking about reconciling the primary care parent and the alternate primary care parent's perceptions and perspectives and the language of conflict resolution. What do we do when we are coming to loggerheads with our other parent as to what path we take with our kids, either long-term in terms of, do we change schools? Do we engage in therapy? Do we do other things? Or short-term, what do we do about bedtime? This is not going so easily, and it's not going so smoothly. What do we do? How do we do that? And then charting the course, different things that we can do, and then question and discussions afterwards. But again, there's the last one is sort of, you don't need that, because questions can happen at any time. Are we ready to go? Okay, for the first one. Okay, early jobs. When we are parenting our neurotypical and our neurodiverse kids when they're infants, for both parents have the responsibility and the contact to be able to learn about being a parent via books, friends. If you have you watch other families with their little kids, and we can learn from that. We happen to be in our group at school. There were 3 parents who had kids within 4 months. And so it was really it was like going to grad school for parenting, because we'd because we were the first ones. And so we'd muddle our way through, and our friends got a chance to watch our muddling and at least be prepared for those muddlings when they had it. And it turns out that the kids and the parents were friends all the way through for that. Our own parents either welcomed or not welcomed. Our own parents are resources for us to be able to learn some of the things that we need to do with our infants. Sometimes that advice is welcome by us, that we look to grandparents to be able to give us some guidance. Sometimes it's less welcome, maybe, when we are in the midst of a struggle with our kids, and sometimes our parents say, I don't know why you're struggling with this. All you have to do is this, and it's not so easy. But they're good anyways. Coffee clutches. Coffee clutches are things that used to happen more often than they do now. And what a coffee clutch was when we were kids was there was in our neighborhood of duplexes in Worcester, Massachusetts, and housing that was built for the vets as they were coming home from World War II. The moms generally stayed home and the dads generally worked. And there was a bread delivery truck that would deliver breads and pastries and those things. And once a week, the moms would get together at somebody's house and have coffee. And when Johnny Cushman was the guy, and bring pastries, and they would talk. And they talked a lot about kids. Because if you have a neighborhood, unlike the way it was at Eagle Hill, when we all kind of clustered, there were kids of different ages all the time. And it was an invaluable resource for parents to be able to talk with other parents of kids of the same age as theirs, and also older than theirs, and also younger than theirs, just to share that insight and experience that they've had. Siblings, if your siblings happen to have kids and you watch how they are dealing with their kids, that's one of the ways that we learn as well. And also from pediatricians, that when we have real questions about our kids, not just from a health point of view, but from the progress of their development, pediatricians are ones that we oftentimes go to get some information. That makes sense, yes? Okay. And then the tricks of the trade, like things that we have to learn about feeding. That you may be able to read about feeding in a book, but every kid is different. But they all have idiosyncrasies. And I think one of the things that we learn over the first couple of months, I take that back, one of the things that our family learned, my wife and myself, was that that it doesn't work right away is not the end of the world, because we have to get used to it. This is a learning process. We've never been parents before. And so what we have to learn is that to be a little bit patient. Bathing is the same thing. Diapering, stimulating how we play with our kids, what voice that we use that is maybe too loud and our kids get frightened by that, and which soothing sounds that we make. Establishing routines is really important. Soothing is important, and entertaining is important. During this time, it is more likely that the parents can be at least in the same chapter, if not on the same page with their kids, because their kids at that point as infants there's a limit in their responsiveness to us. And so whatever we are able to do with our infants as dads and as moms and as primary care parents, as opposed to alternate care parents, that's going to be able to work out. It gets a little bit more complicated as kids get older. For the primary care parents, when we take our kids out, if we put them in a stroller and take them to a restaurant, if we put them in a stroller and go to the playground, one of the things that the primary care parent does is observe overall development. How does my kid respond to other parents who come in and look at the stroller or that? How does our kid respond to other kids? What is my kid's ability to smile, to be able to focus, to sustain eye contact? And then you compare development. When you go to a playground, you're seeing kids who are about the same age and maybe a little bit older. and say, okay, how's that person responding to waiting in line to go up the slide? How is that kid responding to other kids who may be a little bit more pushy? How's that kid responding, who's about the same age as mine, to leaving his mom and going and playing on the playground by himself as opposed to being clingy? So we get to, when we're the primary care parent, we get to observe a lot of these things and then get a sense as to where our kids are compared to other kids, and also be able to plot kind of mentally, plot the growth of our kids developmentally, whether it's socially, whether it's emotionally, or whether it's physically. We have a lot of things to compare to. We also get the foster development. We watch as other parents play with their kids, have the kids reach for something, encourage their kids to walk, encourage their kids to do things different and to try new things. And we get to do things that are going to give our kids opportunities to develop and practice. We promote communication in our kids before they are verbal, with their smiles, respond to their smiles, respond to eye contact, respond to reaching out when they go for hugs. Also respond if they're feeling anxious and they curl in like this. What do we do? How are we going to respond to that? And give them feedback that they are indeed communicating. Provide opportunity for social interactions. That's what we're talking about. Give opportunities for kids to be with other kids, and if there are no other kids available, to be with other adults and to engage them. It's frustrating sometimes when we see, knowing that, in our world, knowing how important it is that we engage with our kids, to see people who are taking their kids for a walk in a stroller and the dad or the mom is on the phone, instead of taking the opportunity to point out different colored trees or the birds over there, or to engage with their kids. That's a really important thing that we can do. And encourage family connections. That when we go and visit, if we can, visit cousins and being uncles and aunts and grandparents, give them the opportunity that there is a unit around them, that there is a support system around us in the form of family, and get them used to that family, because that's going to be important for them. So primary care parent, the parent who is with the kids most of the time, gets to do this a lot. This is the beginning of some of the differences between the primary and the alternate care parent. Certainly the alternate care parent is usually a part of the family connections. When we go to grandma's house, when we go to auntie's house, or those things, we're usually a part of that as well. Also promoting communications. When we are with the kids, or when the alternate care parent comes home from work, there's great opportunities for the person, alternate care parent, to be able to come and engage with the kids and talk and ask them what they've done today, or play with them, or roughhouse with them if that's what it's going to be, to encourage that sort of communication. These next ones are a little bit different. Whereas the moms had opportunity to observe development, for the alternate care parent, it's not just to the same degree. So we don't see our kids, if we are the alternate care parent, we do not see our kids in the same context that the primary care parent does. We don't spend as much time with them on a regular basis at a playground. We don't spend as much time with them with the kids in the neighborhood. We don't spend as much time with them as they're engaging with other adults. We do, but it's not the same. Or the same thing, we have fewer chances, therefore, to compare development, to see how our son or daughter compares in terms of physical development, social development, communication, compares with other kids. We have some opportunities to do that, but less. To be able to foster development, of course we do, when we play blocks or we play different games with our kids. We have an opportunity to do that, but less so than the primary care parent. And opportunities for social interactions, we just don't have as much. So from here, could there be issues that may arise given the different contexts that the primary care parent and the alternate care parent experiences their kids? Could there be problems that could arise with them? What might they be? What might they be? Anybody? Yeah? Absolutely. Yes, because of that more frequent observation that there can be a difference in the ways that the parents are going to respond to kids, oftentimes when the kids are in distress, right? Um, if the primary care parent sees that the kid gets really stressed when there's a lot of language around or a lot of busyness around, and that primary care parent is the one who knows how to buffer that with the kid, knows the distance, that's the right distance to stay away from the other kids at the playground right away, knows how to temper her voice and to lower it like that. Whereas the alternate care parent may see this time with the kid as being, this is when we're going to have fun. And so may ramp it up a little bit and rile the kids up a little bit. And the mom says, oh, please don't. Oh, please don't do that because I know what's going to happen if that happens. So that's right. Anything else? Any other potential issues that could come from the different exposure, the different contexts that we have? Yeah.
Right. So the person who's the primary, I think that's where we need to learn how to work together and speak to one another, because obviously the primary knows more. And so if they frame the question or their response inappropriately, it's almost an attack on their partner. And I think that's probably one of the more divisive things that can occur.
Absolutely. No, I agree. You want to come? You should probably do this statement because this presentation, because yes, exactly right. That there is a different level of experience and exposure. At some point, that different level of experience and exposure may not lead to sort of knowing more and having the best look. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But that the fact that there is going to be a difference, that the exposure and the experience is different, may make the suggestions of the alternate care parent seem to be a challenge to the primary care parent, may seem to be a ridiculous notion to the primary care parent because of that experience that they have. And it may be contributing to the alternate care parent not contributing and not talking and not adding and swallowing that because, number one, I know that I have less exposure. And number two, the way that I am talking with the primary care parent doesn't seem to work that great. So I'd better off being quiet. When the alternate care parent is quiet, does that mean those concerns and suggestions disappear? Yeah, it stays here. And there's a bit of resentment that can build that, wait, this is our kid. How come I can't figure out a way to participate in the process of parenting? Yes? Would that ever happen, or am I speaking out of school? Is that not even close? Yes, in the back.
In unique situations like when you're a single parent from the start and have to work, your only alternate care parent is a nanny or a daycare. So then I'm working. How do I participate in parenting? And then how do I communicate feedback with the other quote unquote parent who's either a daycare worker or a nanny or something else that's not a parent? So I think that, that is its own sort of dilemma.
Yeah.
And I wonder how you would reconcile or how this would be applicable if you have any, I guess if you have any suggestions.
Sure. We're going to talk about that more at the end. But for a single parent, seesaws are really fun if you have somebody on the other side of the seesaw. But if you're just the only person on the seesaw, it doesn't work that way. It's not so much fun. And I think when you're a single parent, as much as sometimes the communication between parents with different perspectives and different perception as to what's going on, that can be kind of a fractious communication. It's a communication. And it's a feeling that we can sort of talk about other things and we both can learn from parts of that. We want it to be less fractious because you learn more if it's less fractious. But even then, you're going to learn something. It's a greater challenge when you're a single parent. And we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end. And if what I say at the end and what we're talking about at the end does not address that, could you bring it up afterwards and we can talk? Because other people may have that idea. Okay? Anything else on this? Where are we? Oh, did I change that by accident or did it just change? Okay. Yes, this is when we find out that the different exposure and different experiences that we have with our kids are leading to some friction between parents, and there's going to be friction. There's going to be friction between parents all the time. I mean, in every situation. Not everybody is going to be on the same page all the time. Friction is not a bad thing in and of itself. Friction, when it alternates with time where there's not friction, when there's people, where the parents are feeling as though they're relatively in sync with one another, then the friction is tolerable. When it's all friction all the time, that's really erosive. And that can really get in the way of us being the parents that we need to be for our kids, particularly when we talk about our kids with neurodivergence, okay? So it's best if parents can be open to learning from one another. So if we're talking about a dad who has a comment to a mom about something that he is seeing in the mom and kids interactions or the routines that they're setting up or whatever that's going to be able to find a way that that communication can happen and not have defensiveness come in and not having sort of the blame come into those communications, that's going to be really important. There's going to be times when that's going to happen. We need to be able to recognize those times and use the tools that we're going to talk about later to be able to take a couple of steps back and then re-engage without the blaming and without the defensiveness. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. Adjust for differences in parenting style and temperament. You know, we may be married or partners, or when it comes to nannies, we may have similar goals, but we're not the same people. We're different. We have different senses of humor. We have different energy levels. We have different ways of communicating. We have different tolerance for differences in the things that we see, different levels of flexibility. There are always going to be those differences. What we have to do, particularly when there's friction going on, is to be able to acknowledge that those differences exist and be able to sort of accept that those differences are there and to be able to encourage each other to not, because it's different, identify it as bad or lesser than, okay? Acknowledge that differing perspectives yield different perceptions. Yes, that's some of the stuff that we were talking about, particularly on the playground. When parents know that kids are going to be more reluctant to go to groups if it's going to be noisy. And then when the kids come home, we don't see that if you're not their primary care parent. We need to understand that that is why mom has developed a way, or the primary care parent has developed a way to be able to help kids through those sorts of difficult, loud times. Open to constructive commentary from one another. That's when we were talking about that's really hard. When we know that the primary care parent has spent a lot of time with the kids and has probably had a long day, and we see something that we may have a suggestion about, we have to be able to, the primary care parent has to be open to those sorts of suggestions without being defensive. And the alternate primary care parent needs to know how to deliver that commentary without it being criticism. And again, we're going to talk about that later on. Practice active listening and using I talk versus you talk. Active listening is, it's a pretty crucial skill that we have when we work as parenting pairs and when we work as in our jobs or we work in a school and we're talking with our kids. Active parenting meaning that we have as our goal as a communicator in this dyad is that we want to express that our goal is to understand what you're saying, not just for you to understand what I'm saying. So if you're listening actively, and you listen to the comment that, or the content of what your partner is saying, it is really important to acknowledge what that content is. Whether you agree with that content or not is irrelevant. What we want our partners to know is that they've been heard. And also, active listening involves the emotion as well. If there is content that's being delivered by the alternate parent, that is anger or sad, acknowledge those emotions. Wow, this is really hard. This really makes you angry when, and then state it back, what sorts of things happen. Okay, so active communication is really good. I talk versus you talk. When you say things that what your perception is and what your experience is, as opposed to you talk, which is you do this and you do that. When you point a finger at somebody, when you use you talk, it sets them up to be defensive. When you use I talk, it's going to allow them to feel not attacked and open to the things that you're going to have to say. Is that clear? Does that make any sense? That's kind of an old concept, and so I think I just wanted to mention it. And accept different temperaments and different parenting styles. I don't know if you can read this, but the kids are asking, the mom is saying Tion, which is to help them spell. Then it says, so if she's the momtionary, is there such a thing as a dadtionary? Oh, sure. Oh, why don't you ever use it? Dad, do you know how to spell European? European? You should know that one. Oh, that's why. So there's different styles. Okay? Now we're going to talk about our kids, our neurodiverse kids. I'm sorry, this is probably done. Does anybody in the audience have a kid with neurodiversity, which is a learning disability on the spectrum, those things? Okay, what we're going to talk about are the things that we're going to talk about now are characteristics of these kids that make the job of parenting differently challenging, let's say, okay? When our kids are challenging to soothe, when there seems to be nothing that we can do that is going to help our kids not cry or not be agitated or not be so quick to be frustrated and angry and temper tantrum. And we try firmness and we try coddling and we try low voices and we try loud voices. We try a variety of different things, but nothing seems to help our kids soothe. When our kids have unpredictable sleep patterns, food tolerances, and tactile sensitivities, when we don't understand why we put a t-shirt on our kid and it's like it's like they're being tased. They can't stand it because there's a tag on the back of it. Or if the sock doesn't fit exactly right, then they have a difficult time with that too. Yes, in the back. Hi, Robin. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a guy, Dr. Larry Silver, who is a psychiatrist in Washington, and when he did a talk at our school once, and he said something that I thought was brilliant. He said the brain develops over time, and there are sometimes when the kids are at a certain level, like when they're infant to 3, that part of the brain doesn't happen to have any neurological anomalies in it because that's what they're doing. But then as brains mature, other parts of the brain come online. And if that part of the brain that is newly maturing and newly coming online has sort of a neurological anomaly, that's when kids may be able to have different sensitivities or different habits. That's the way that he described it. Or is there a doctor in the house that can confirm that? I would love that. But no, I mean, it seems to make so much sense because when we talk with parents of our kids at school, so frequently they said, this kid was social and on target until he was 4 years old. And then the wheels fell off. I mean, we don't know why that happened. And when different parts of the brain come online, that seems to make more sense. Does that? Okay. have lagging communication skill development. Okay, one of the things that is very frustrating, was very frustrating for us, that as our kids were approaching the becoming verbal stage, and it was different for each of our kids, it was really hard for them to transfer from sort of the pointing part and expecting that we would respond to that, and going into give us some words to talk about either what they're feeling or what their needs are and those things. For a lot of our kids with neurodiversity, the trajectory of learning how to communicate is sometimes at a lower pitch for our kids. They develop language slower, that their receptive language is okay, but their expressive language lags significantly behind. And as they get older, they have stronger senses of what their needs are and what their desires are. And when they can't make those clear with words, then for them to be able to control that frustration is a challenging thing. And so for us, we want to know what the kids are telling us, and they can't do that. And we see them getting more and more frustrated with that. And what happens to our frustration level? Like big time. And when we are frustrated, are we the parents that we want to be? Are we the communicators that we want to be? Are we the sort of universal soothers and acceptors from what our kids' emotions are? No. So that frustration that can build from the communication difficulties is significant. Idiosyncratically responsive to parents and siblings. What that means is we don't know for our neurodiverse kids, for some of our neurodiverse kids, which kid we're talking with. Are we talking with the kid who has the capacity to be able to manage some degree of frustration, that can be demonstrating some degree of patience, can actually hear the word no and not decompensate for that? Is it going to be the kid who's going to be able to delay gratification? Or is it going to be the kid, if they ask for something or make their needs known and they're not responded to right away, they dissolve, they explode, they have a tantrum, they attack, they can hit, they can do whatever those things are. And that's between the interaction between the kids and the parents, but also between the kids and their siblings and the kids and other kids at school as well. So that they're just an unpredictable and idiosyncratic way that they are responsive to other people. They seem behind other kids socially, physically, and emotionally, that their ability to be able to mitigate emotions, to be able to quell frustration, quell the responses to frustration, to be able to communicate, to be able to do things independently, go up the ladder to the slide and go down the slide by themselves, be able to be on a swing and learn how to do the feet thing, whatever it is, out when you're going this way. That you see other kids doing that, and I see other kids younger than your kids doing that, and you say, okay, that there's something amiss here, okay? So that makes it tough to be us too. And then when tried and true parenting strategies, all the things that people have told us to do from the time that they are infant, you need to be able to have a routine. You need to be able to talk in a particular way, be able to calm them down before they go to bed. You need to be able to give them choices at meals. All of the great ideas that people give us, they don't work consistently for our kids. For whatever reason, they don't work. It's just that they don't work. After this, if we are trying all the things that we know and all the things that we have learned about parenting and they don't work, how are we feeling as parents? What? Yeah, that we're failing. And every time we go to the playground and we see other kids doing it the right way, say, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Everybody else seems to have an easier time with this. Again, not creating in us a good emotional state where we are sort of fortified to deal with kids who are going to need us to be kind of super moms and super dads. Yes, yes? Okay. When we talked about tried and true parenting strategies. These are all good things to keep in mind. None of these things is going to work all the time if you've got a neurodiverse kid. And I think what we have to do is to sort of change our focus when we can, where if some of these things work some of the time, then we have to say, okay, good. If I could reach back and pat myself in the back, good for us. We are able to provide some sort of comfort, some sort of soothing, some sort of patience that we're engendering in our kids some of the time, okay? And that's a good thing. What's really hard is that we get a lot of information that said, when your kid does this, do this, and it's going to be better. And that just doesn't, it doesn't work with our kids. It doesn't work with our kids. There is no such thing as a magic bullet. Although sometimes we get some treatments that really work well for our kids, there's nothing that's going to work perfectly all the time, okay? So some of those things are establish firm but not rigid routines. Our kids are comforted by predictable, that they are comforted by knowing what's coming next. And routines help that. Sometimes we can help that by just saying, okay, we've got, another 5 minutes of this TV show, and after that, we got to go wash our hands and have dinner. That we need to be kind of like the preview of coming attractions for our kids to let them know what's going to happen next. Yes? Yeah? Makes sense? Yeah. Breast cancer, 17.
Would you take the same approach? So we have a neurotypical, quote
Yep.
unquote, child, neurodivergent child in our family. Would you take the same approach? And sorry to jump the gun on it.
No, it's not jumping
Would
in
you
at all.
take the same approach with your neurotypical child that you're going to speak to about a neurodivergent child as a parent?
In terms of routines, in terms of
All of these bullets that you're going to speak to, would you parent differently, or would you see a neurotypical child you should lead the way the same way? Because I think as I look at this that it applies. You don't want to necessarily, divide the room, if you will.
Yeah.
And so I'm just curious to hear your take on that.
Yeah, in my opinion, these are good parenting strategies, whether you've got a neurotypical kid or a neurodiverse kid. I think if we have a neurotypical kid who's going to learn and adapt, perhaps at a different rate and a different trajectory as our neurodiverse kids, sometimes we can do this for them, and then they sort of get that that's the routine, and we don't have to announce it, and we don't have to reinforce it so consistently. For our neurodiverse kids, we need to learn about them more. We need to learn how much we need to keep that structure pretty clear and evident and repeated in order for them to be able to manage their behavior within these parameters. And then once they get that, we can sort of move the parameters out a little bit and maybe not repeat it so frequently and maybe not have it be so firm. And we can do that. For neurotypical kids, their ability to sort of veer and then come back on their own, veer like when the bedtime time changes, when the meal routine is different. They can veer and then come back, okay? It's much harder for our neurodiverse kids to be able to veer and then come back. And so all of these are good parenting strategies. They need to be applied differently to our neurodiverse kids. And another thing about this, when we do these things and our kids are compliant or they're moving toward compliant, we need to be reinforcers like you have never been reinforcers before, and responders like we've never been responders before. That when our kids are approaching success, or maybe they're just a little better than when they were at their worst, kids need to hear that. Positive reinforcement, acknowledging positive change in our kids, that's gonna help them move in the direction that we want them to do. Not reminding them of the things that they're not doing well. That's a basic, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, thanks for that question, that's a good one. Son of a gun. Focus on and reinforce the bejesus out of incremental positive changes. If there's any parenting strategy that I have learned from our attitude toward our kids at school, at the Eagle Hills for School for Kids Who Have Learning Disabilities and Attention Deficits. It's the power of positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement not only increases the likelihood of positive behaviors repeating themselves, but it fortifies the kids. It helps them to believe different things about themselves from what they were believing when things were not going so great, when they didn't know how to really comply, and they really didn't know how to manage their behavior, and they didn't know how to do their homework, and they didn't know how to sit down for a time and stay focused. Every time that we give positive reinforcement to incremental positive change, it allows kids to develop a different sense of who they are. That's the gospel, I think, for me, right there. That makes sense, yes? Okay. Guide and acknowledge contributions by all members of the family. This is when it gets a little tricky if you have a neurodiverse kid and a neurotypical kid, because you're a member of the family, you deserve and earn and need positive reinforcement and attention from the parents. That if you have that little handout, Julie has that handout, where is it? This thing here talks about how in families, our neurodiverse kids require a lot more attention and different amounts of time. And when we only have so much time ourselves, when we give them the time that needs, it means that the other kids in the family who happen to be neurotypical are not getting something. And when we talked about the neurotypical kids being able to veer away from structure and then come back, they can veer away from and go through stages when they're not getting so much attention, but they need it at some point. And so one of the things, and it's like adding one more thing to the pile of things that parents of neurodiverse kids have on their plate, is to also tune into the neurotypical kids and know what they need as well. And that they need special time. They may not need the same amount of time. They don't need the same amount of time, but that doesn't mean they don't need time. And it doesn't mean they don't need attention and reinforcement and acknowledgement and celebration. Yeah, makes sense, yes? Okay. Where are we? Set attainable goals for our kids. Is that a question? Go for it. Yeah.
When you have more than one neurodiverse child, how does that dynamic shift?
It helps to be Sybil. Have multiple personalities, just have one of it. I would love to say that a neurodiverse kid is a neurodiverse kid is a neurodiverse kid, and that's not even close to being in the same universe as truth. I think what it means is, if we have a partner, whether it's a nanny or a partner that lives with us and co-parents with us, it's really important that we have a similar view of what the needs are of each of those different neurodivergent kids. And sometimes it would be great if we can be two parents with each kid, so that we have kind of a tag team with them. A lot of times that's not going to work. So sometimes we need to divide and conquer. And we need to know what are some of the routines for neurodivergent kid 1, and what are the needs and habits and routines for neurodivergent kid 2, and to be able to feel comfortable that those needs and those idiosyncratic needs are being met by each of the tag team. And that's hard for reasons that we're going to talk about a little bit later. We are used to a feedback loop as an adult, as a successful adult, that when we come up with a problem, we will put our brain together or talk with other people on our team and come up with a solution and address that problem that way. And that's either successful, or it gives us an idea as to where we have to tweak our solution to have it successful. Yeah, that's not the way our kids work. It's a different feedback loop. We may have done all the right thinking and planning and learning and reading and all those sorts of things and do those things with our kid, and that may not work right away. And we say, what what else can I do? That's when I think we have to, in this communication, help each other be patient and say, we're going to try this. And we know our kids, and new things are more often failures than successes because our kids they don't like novelty. They don't like surprises. They don't like things that are going to be different. And so we have to know that that response from them is something that we have to leapfrog over. That response is not going to guide us to tweak. Right away, it's going to guide us to be patient and do it again and do it again. And then observe and then talk with each other to see whether or not are we seeing any movement in the right direction. And then you'll know when the time is that, okay, this made sense when we learned it, and it made sense to try it the way that we did, but I don't think it's going the right direction. So we have to take 2 steps back, roll up our sleeves, and try to find something else. Does that make any sense? Okay, all right. We can talk more about that afterwards. Yes?
For the siblings of the kids
Yep.
who need the different strategies and the frustrations that they might feel like we're always waiting on this person, or now we can't do this because they are acting this way. I don't know. I know obviously it's important to be having conversations with all of the kids and people's different needs, but they're still kids, and
they're still kids.
that can be hard.
Yeah. And if I did that, I'd be in my room for a week. And why does he get away with just now, Billy, we have to do something? Yes. I keep doing that, sorry. In a nutshell, education is really, really important. The more that we can learn about our neurodiverse kid, and the more that we can have everybody in the family they're not going to have the equal education about it. They're not going to have an equal understanding about it. But to have an understanding that things are different because there's a difference in the way that your sister or your brother learns, and the way that he is going to be able to develop some of the things that you develop like this. It's going to take more time and more energy and a different response from mom and dad in order to help her along in that direction. And you're going to be frustrated. And when you're frustrated, when you see things moving more slowly than you want, that's the thing that we can talk about that. We can talk about that. So education is really important about that. Yeah.
I just want to say something
Yep.
about the sibling stuff. So
Yes.
Dave has done a presentation for us about siblings. And when I send out next week this presentation, because everyone will get a copy of the video of this presentation, we'll also send out a copy of your
Yep.
sibling presentation.
Sure. And I think that can be, it can be helpful. We used to do the sibling things at school. We'd have the brothers and sisters of our kids come to school for a night of pizza and a movie, essentially, and then a small group things. And our kids at school were irate that what? He gets or she gets to come for pizza and a movie. And the reason that we did that is to be part of that education, part of letting the kids. There's a movie called How Difficult Can This Be? Rick Lavoie, he did a video on the experience of having a learning disability, and it was done in the late 80s. And so it's a great video. There's a lot of shoulder pads and curly hair in that video, but that doesn't diminish the value of it. And so we had our neurotypical siblings watch parts of that movie and then talk about it. And then we had them come together to talk about what that experience was. So yes, education is key. And that wouldn't be a bad movie to put down on your list. It's called How Difficult Can This Be? And it's Rick Lavoie, Lavoie. Okay? We move. Yeah, this is sort of self-explanatory on this. The bottom one is really important. make the time to nourish your own relationship. If you're lucky enough to have a co-parent in this process, understand that parenting neurodiverse kids has so many opportunities for joy. I think as a parent, we tune into more of those incremental changes. And once we do, we can celebrate those. Whereas other people can take it for granted that, of course, my kid's going to develop the ability to have friends, or of course, he's going to develop the ability to know how to be on a team or know these sorts of things. For our kids, it's different. Lots of opportunities for that joy. There are lots of opportunities for frustration and impatience and friction between partners. Figure out together some of the things that you can do that are going to make you feel as though you're on the same team with your spouse. It could be as simple as deciding on a movie to watch once the kids go to bed, getting a babysitter and going out to eat. Something where you just have the opportunity to say, oh, that's why we get married. I remember that now. Because we're not showing ourselves always, not showing the best face of ourselves always when we're in the middle of the friction that comes with parenting our kids. Does that make sense? Okay. Next. Okay. This blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing. That when our kids have a sort of a different developmental trajectory in these areas, it's hard. Our kids oftentimes have school troubles. And so not only is it difficult for our kids at home sometimes, particularly when we're balancing neurotypical kids with kids who have neurodiversities, that we have school issues. And we have to navigate, what's an IEP? What's a 504? What are all these things? We have to learn a different language in a different world. And that's hard. And that's when you call Eve and Robin. And a group like SPED NET can really help us navigate that process in a way that we really need. But again, if we're in a situation where we get called by the school and we have to come into the school and we hear these things and there's a problem and we don't know what to do about it, again, it is a blow to our parent self-esteem. It just is. And when we feel inept and inadequate, and we're going to talk about emotions in a second, that can lead to hard things. Okay, that makes sense over here, right? I'm going to go a little bit fast because I thought we'd be done in an hour and a half. We're not going to be done in an hour and a half. What did I do? What did I do? Hold on. Please work. Yes. Okay. All right. These are some of the things, again, in talking with the moms and the dads at the dads group and the support groups that we have at school and here too. These are some of the things that are difficult, sort of focal points of some of the difficulties. The first one is fostering independence as opposed to promoting dependence in the kids. What dads say, what alternate primary care parents say, is that when they see their kid with their mom, they see a mom who is so engaged with the kids and successfully fending off meltdowns, successfully fending off tantrums, successfully avoiding areas of conflict with the kids when it comes to eating at the table, when it comes to staying at the table, when it comes to allocating chores. We see somebody who is really, really involved with that. And sometimes the dads feel like, wait, let's let him try it on his own. Let's let him do some things. Let's let him see if he can get used to the way that everybody pitches in around dinner time, that somebody sets the table and somebody clears the table and somebody does that. Let's see if we can bring him to a playground and not be the one who is always at the swing or not always with the kids all the time. Let's see what happens when we do that. And so there's one good observation about let's see if we can promote independence. And there's one great action that knowing the kid well knows the different things, the different props, the different buttresses that we need to give the kid in order to help him stay on an even emotional keel. Both of those things are right. Where do we meet? Where do we meet? A rich discussion when the discussion can be free of blame and defensiveness. Okay? Does that make sense? Okay. Same thing for level of expectations. You know, I want and I think that our daughter can be able to do her homework without us standing over her shoulder, asking and responding to every single question. I believe that. And then the other one says, you've never seen the tantrum that ensues when I leave my daughter's shoulder when she's doing her homework. You know, I think that we should expect that she can do it more independently. I think you're out of your mind because you don't see what happens otherwise. Conflict area? Ever? Is this close here? Okay. Distribution of parenting responsibilities. Who does what? Who's the put to bed guy? Who is the sit next to the kid at mealtime guy? Who's the homework guy? Who's the this? Distribution implies that there's a shared kind of responsibility as opposed to, glad I'm the alternate primary care parent and the other, my wife or my dad or my husband are doing all these things on ourselves. When there's the distribution doesn't have to be equal. It has to be what is perceived as fair by both times. Coming to that point is an important thing. When it doesn't, when we don't talk about it and we don't try to even the distribution, friction point. Distribution of attention toward the other siblings, that's what we're talking about too. That sometimes when we have the luxury of being able to divide and conquer, we can say, okay, this is the time when I am going to go with neurotypical kids. Don't we talk about our kids as neurotypical at home? The neurotypical kids, and you are with a neurodivergent kid. This is what we're doing and that stuff. To be able to share, to be able to give attention to both sets of kids. Dissemination of parenting advice, how we talk with one another is important. Appearance of favoritism, in that little blurby handout, there's a sort of an example of why the favoritism sort of comes to be perceived at home. And it's about going way back, the different exposure that the primary care parent has to the kids and the various levels of development which are happening or not happening. There's a different relationship between the primary care parent and the neurodiverse kids. And that leaves that there's an opening for less of a connection with some of the other kids, perhaps. Parents of favoritism, keeping pace with the Joneses kids. That is, not just because we're in Fairfield County, but maybe a little bit because we're in Fairfield County, that we're exposed to the kids of a lot of different people. And we see the golden boys and the golden girls who happen to have all the words and they happen to have a lot of athletic talent, or they can sing like an angel, or they play an instrument beautifully. They seem to have a collection of friends. They seem to be easy around adults and around other kids. We're exposed to all that, and it's really hard to not compare what it's like to be a parent of our kid compared to what it's like to be a parent of their kids. And there can be a bit of parenting envy at this point. Like, wait, but that parent is with her kids at the playground and she's sitting on the bench reading a book? What? When is that going to happen for me? Sometimes the automatic pilot thing for us in our neurodivergent kids seems way, 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 way off in the distance. And that's hard. Any comments about that? No? Yes? Go on, Cynthia.
When you see that happen and your kid is 19 and they tell you it's going to be better when she turns 25.
Yeah.
You're just like, oh my God. Because the other kid's going to college doing everything and your kid's just stuck in your house.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to accept it.
Yeah. We have to change our hope horizon.
Yes.
You
You have
know.
to change your hope, your vision. You have to just accept how your kid is and not compare with your neighbor kids.
Yeah.
Wilton, whose kids is all sport and awesome.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's really hard not to. And when we talk, when we do self-talk ourselves and we feel the frustration and we feel that envy, that's real. I mean, that's not, you can't stop feelings from happening. It's like the bumper sticker that says something happens. Feelings happen that way. And you can't deny it, but we can sort of step back and respond to it. We can choose how we respond to it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Yes. Thanks, Cynthia.
I was gonna say, okay. Maybe not even between keeping up with the Joneses. There's their own siblings.
Yeah.
And their different abilities. And why were my kids this way? And then I have these two. Well, in my scenario, my sister has 5 kids. The first 3 appear to be okay. No diagnosis yet.
No
And
diagnosis-free kids. Good.
The last 2 twins are on the spectrum, varying spectrum because they're completely different, albeit they're twins.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've had this conversation where she's like, where did I go wrong? And why are my kids, my first 3 were okay. And now I have these 2 kids. And I'm just like, it's different, and I'm just sitting here like, oh my God, I know, I live it. I don't have them, but I would be not the alternate parent, but the third participant to their ordeal. But I've seen it with her and I'm like, she doesn't even have to go far. She does it with her siblings and I'm like, you can't do that. Yeah. I'm like, I understand why you would do it, but I'm like, it's not fair to them because they don't have a choice. They can't, they can't help it. Right. So even the older kids are just like, you can't compare, so it's not that far out. Maybe parents do it, subconsciously, just you do it and just not want to do it. So you don't have to even go out that far.
Right. It faces her every day at home. That difference between, wait a minute, when did I start to stink as a parent? When the first 3 kids, it was work and then it was less work and then it was independence. And then I've got 2 more kids and it's work and it's more work and it's more frustration and it's a little bit of improvement. But then I compare to, what other kids are in the same house and it's different, right? And it's hard to successfully accommodate those feelings and not react to them with sort of self-blame. And hopefully we can talk about how we can do that. Okay? This just makes me chuckle. You're making it very hard for me to be the parent I'd imagine myself to be. Okay, so all this stuff makes sense, right? That we know that the nature of our neurodiverse kids are that it's gonna be different. They're gonna improve differently. They're gonna progress differently. They're gonna develop differently. There's gonna be more fits and starts with them. We know that up here. Why does it make us crazy? Why does it, when we experience the frustration that goes with on so many different areas of raising our kids with neurodiversity, why does it make us crazy sometimes? Well, maybe it's because we're unaccustomed to not succeeding. As capable adults who have gone to school, who have had friends, who have had a partner, and gotten to do that and been a resource for our families and all the rest of these things, that we've done things okay. that we've been able to manage and we're successful. And then we come to the time where before we have our own kids, we look at other families, and most of the things that jump out at us are the way that things are going smoothly. And oh, isn't that adorable? Look at that kid. Everything's so fun. And then we have our own kids, and they're neurodiverse and they present different challenges. We think, whoa, I'm going to have to roll up my sleeves and just get this going. And when you roll up your sleeves and you try to get this going, it doesn't move as quickly as you want. It doesn't move sometimes in the direction that you want. And it doesn't make us feel good. It doesn't make us feel very good. And that's hard. And we're used to a more predictable feedback loop. That's what we were talking about before. That when we identify a problem, when we analyze it, when we come up with a solution and we apply that solution, we're used to seeing some success right away. That doesn't happen so much with our kids. We need to be differently patient. We need to be differently, available to tweak and to understand that. That's different for us. It makes us so impatient when we look at other parents, and they make it look really easy. So exasperating to try to do what the experts tell us to do, and it still doesn't work. That we're bright learners, but it's so hard to figure out our kid. It is so tempting to go online and listen to what people say about kids who are on the spectrum, kids who have learning disability, kids who have attention problems, kids who have a conduct issue, kids are OCD. We can find a lot of accurate information. We can find no information that's specifically geared to our kid. And so we need to understand that when we go through the process of trying to learn, that we are gathering information and we are responsible for assimilating that information and making that information fit what our experiences are with our kids. Nobody on that internet is going to tell us what to do and it's going to work for our kids. They're going to give us suggestions. They're going to give us stories. And we're going to read those stories and see some of the things that are similar to our own situations, and then be able to pick and choose from that and try and be patient with it. And maybe with patience, we'll begin to see positive results. And when we have that patience and we don't see positive results after what we think is a reasonable amount of time, which isn't like 2 days, then we're going to sort of try again. Look at the information, reassimilate it, reanalyze it, reapply it to our own situation, and try again. It makes us sad to remember that we used to be such a good team. That before kids, you're not parents yet, but husbands and wives, or husbands and husbands and wives and whatever, you get married for a reason, because you like to do similar sorts of things, and you thought each other was funny and creative and interesting and smart. And then come kids, there's no manual for that. And then you get the kids, and it doesn't feel the same way as it did before kids. With each other. I mean, obviously the time is different, but with each other, there's more friction. There's sometimes less understanding. Sometimes there's less flexibility. And sometimes you think of, oh, it was kind of nice back in the olden days. And then family dynamics. And this is what this sheet is here. And if you look at it, all this is, I'm going to go to it. I didn't think you could really read it, which is why the library made the copies of this. What this essentially is a couple of different scenarios. These are not the only scenarios, whatever they are, that talk about what can happen when there is a neurodivergent kid that comes into the family. The different connections between moms and dads with each other, different connection between moms and dads with the neurodivergent kid, different connections between moms and the neurotypical kid or kids in the family, and why that happens, and how it can lead to situations that feel really, really difficult to be able to manage. Okay? I don't want to, right, Eve? I don't want to go through every one of those. Okay. It's
I think everybody has one.
Yes. Okay. If you don't have one, there should be some at the back. Okay? Good. Thanks for that. Why am I doing this? Okay. These are some of the things. Well, not so bad. These are some of the things that we can do when we feel as though the situation with our family, managing a kid with neurodiversity, feeling sort of less apt, right? Inept about dealing with that. Apt has to be a word if it's inept. Less able to rise to the challenge of our kids. We want to be able to do something about it. Okay, so we're going to talk about some different things that we can do. When I work with kids at school, we talk about emotions. Can you believe that? And the way that sometimes the kids' ability to understand and manage these emotions can get in the way of them being positive learners, them being good friends, good teammates, good all of that stuff, good siblings and everything else. The one example that I have in mind, I was walking down in the curriculum center at school, and we have some cubbies, which some kids would go to if they were having trouble or they need some space to do homework or whatever. And I saw one of my kids in there, and I said, "Oh, Steve, what are you doing here?" He said, "I punched Isaac." And I said, "Wait, let me get this straight. He's like your best friend, and you punched him?" "Yeah, and he's in the nurse's office." I said, "Okay, so you really punched him. What happened?" "We were playing box ball, and I went to pick up a ball, and I took my eye off the ball, and I stepped on it and fell on my butt. And everybody started laughing, and Isaac was closest to me, so I punched him." I said, What happened?" I said, "Well, I get mad. I said, "Okay." This is when we talk about scratching off the anger. And that anger, that he had a feeling when he fell on his butt after stepping on the ball, but it morphed into anger. I said, "What was it like when people were laughing at you?" I said, "Oh, I was embarrassed." Actually, first he said, "I was really mad." I said, "Okay, get rid of what was it when you fell and people laugh at you?" "Well, I get embarrassed." I said, "Okay. Have you ever been embarrassed before?" He said, "Yes." So what are some of the things that you did? He said, "Well, other times I would go, 'Oh, dude, that was really coordinated.' And then everybody laughed and I laughed with them and it was fine." I said, "Okay, maybe if you identify the feeling that you were feeling in the circumstance and responded to that instead of the anger that it kind of morphed into, you wouldn't be sitting here in the cubby for the next 3 juice breaks because you clocked your best friend." And I think so when we talk about scratching through the anger in my mind is a feeling that we use as kind of a blanket feeling to cover other feelings. Embarrassment is a horrible feeling to have. It is. As are, feeling inferior, being impatient, being exasperated or frustrated or jealous or confused or inadequate or futile or worried or anxious. Those are not comfortable feelings for us to have. When we substitute anger for these feelings, for some reason that feels better. It's I would rather be an angry person than an inadequate person, than a confused person, than a person who is feeling futile, a person who is feeling worried and anxious. My father-in-law, when my poor mother-in-law would be not feeling well, he would be the biggest grump in the world because he was worried and he didn't like feeling worried. And so being grumpy was his MO. And so these are all real feelings. Are any of these feelings that we feel when we're struggling with our kids? Yeah, 1 or 2 or all. And so when we find ourselves being angry with the kids and feeling angry with our partners, it's a really good thing to be able to understand maybe what are the feelings that are underlying that. Am I feeling particularly impatient right now? Am I feeling particularly futile or embarrassed if I'm going on the playground and my kid's the one who can't play in a reasonable way with the other kids? Yeah. Does that make any sense? Because I think this is really kind of important. Because I think when we talk about conflict and we talk about anger being part of the communication that happens in conflict, I think there's a lot of feelings that are underlying what that anger is. And I think one of the tools that we can use when we are talking with one another about this, whether it's, they're going to yell at me for breaking their mic. Whether it's the nanny or somebody who we're co-parenting with or our co-parents, to be able to understand that these feelings are real and legitimate. Emotions kindled by parenting our kids, pretty much all of those. Okay? And so, one of the things that we can do when we want to work in better partnership with our co-parent is to be able to understand what the emotions are that are being kindled or engendered by our experiences with our neurodiverse kids, okay? So one of the things we need to do, don't apologize for discomforting feelings, articulate them, say it. Don't say, oh, I'm sorry for feeling this, or, I shouldn't feel embarrassed, or I shouldn't feel futile, or anything those. Say it. It's really hard for me when I do what works for you as a parent, and I do the same thing that you do, and it doesn't work for me. It is so frustrating, and it's so embarrassing to see you be able to do it, and I can't, or vice versa, that you're able to do it, and I can't. And I feel embarrassed at that. And I also feel jealous that, what the hell? How come you can do it, and I can't? As opposed to, this is the stupidest technique I've ever heard in my life. Why would you even think that's going to work? Be able to understand those feelings that are underneath it, okay? And see what it is. Feelings happen. Understand that those feelings are real and they're going to happen. We can't stop them. Somebody used the analogies that, okay, I'm going to tell you what not to think about. Do not at all costs think of an ice cream cone right now. What's the image you just had in your head? It was an ice cream cone. You can't do it. Feelings are kind of like that. Our experiences are going to engender feelings. Embrace them, articulate them, and understand that they can sometimes lead to other responses if we don't consciously try to manage that response. Yes? Makes sense? Okay. Gotcha. Getting grip. Develop and practice our own affective vocabulary. When we work with kids in my world, one of the things that we want to do, particularly those kids who are more volatile emotionally and behaviorally, is to be able to help them use words to mitigate those feelings, to communicate those feelings. That when we have peewees, and before they can be verbal, and before they can feel good about their ability to communicate, their frustration level can really skyrocket. And they can have tantrums and those sorts of things too, until they can get the ability to really express these feelings in a good way. What we have to do is to be able to punch up our own affective vocabulary when it comes to our experiences, our emotional experiences of dealing with our kids, okay? Affective just means emotional vocabulary. The expressive vocabulary, part of affective vocabulary, is the different emotional gradients. So what's going on right now? I'm mad. I say, really? How mad are you? I'm mad. How mad? Just mad. Okay, are you annoyed? Are you furious? Are you frustrated? Are you irked? Whatever. Get a range of words to be able to describe your feelings so the person that you're speaking with can have a better handle on where you are, where this person that's talking with you, where you are, so I know how to respond to you better. They know that better if we can more precisely describe the feelings that we're feeling. Does that make sense? Okay. And then receptive is understand what our partner in this communication is feeling too. So tune into not just the content of what they're saying, but the tone of voice, the volume of the voice, the body language, the eye contact, the eyebrow shape. This is mad, and know that when this person is talking with you who is going through these feelings and trying to manage these feelings in the best way that they can, understand that they're feeling them and acknowledge them. Yes? Okay? Try to anticipate your partner's emotional response to the topic and use those words. When you think it's been a really long day for your partner and she is talking about something that was the last straw that put him or her over the edge, we can not say, that wasn't a big deal. What's your problem? Or if you do say that, have armor on, because the person you're talking with is going to want to hit you with something really hard. Be able to talk about the feelings that are going on behind this conversation. As the person is describing something that is very meaningful for him or for her, to be able to acknowledge the feelings that are likely underlying the degree of this emotion. Yeah, that makes sense to you? Yes? Okay? This makes me chuckle. These are all real, by the way. I've heard every single one of them. Which of these is the best way to start a good conversation about parenting? Can you read them? Okay? Every single one of those I heard in either my parent groups or in a parent conference or in a dad's group. And those are the things that come out of these are the things that come out of our mouths when we are exasperated, when we are feeling futile, when we are feeling frustrated, when we are feeling inadequate. And there's a lot of blame in here, a lot of blame, sort of trying to identify the problem, but in a very blaming way. Not exactly the best way to be able to start a conversation that you want to be productive. Done? Okay? Talking the effective talk. Okay? Practice the active communication skills that we were talking about before. Okay? Let your partner in this conversation know that your goal is to understand what he or she is saying. Okay? Once that is communicated, then you can take the step to having yourself be understood to a newly enlightened conversation partner who really wants to understand what you're saying. When that happens, the conversation is going to be better. Not perfect, but it's going to be better. And one of the things that is sometimes not helpful is that if you find that your partner is not being a good active communicator, to tell that partner that they're not being a good active communicator, that doesn't really work. The best that we can do is to model that we can do our part to set the communication off on the right track, right? To do that first step. And try to do it and not sound like you have psychologists anywhere close to your name, because that's what I get from my wife when I'm adopting that. You really have to listen better. She said, don't psychologist voice me. I said, okay, my fault. So we picked did I switch that? How? I'm not even touching. Okay. Respond to the feeling behind what's being said. I mean, all the stuff is that we've talked about this stuff before. Understand that the content that you're listening to is being undergirded by feeling states. Okay. And understand, and the one before when we talked about all those good ways to start a communication, was the top one on the left was, do you think that I was all fun and games for me at work? And then the other one was, do you think it was all fun and games for me at home? And yeah, I understand that this stuff is going on. All right? So respond to it. Affective matching is try to not mimic or imitate the feeling on the other person's side, but to understand and demonstrate in your own tone of voice some of the things that those feelings are. Yes, go ahead. I will take it the wrong way. No, I won't.
It sounds like everything you've said thus far, especially in the last few slides, is essentially how we should parent our children and how we should approach our children.
Yep.
So essentially, we just need to take that and apply it to our parenting with our partner. I mean, that's exactly what I'm hearing here. These are all the things that I want to do with my kids.
Yes. Am
I simplifying? And am I oversimplifying things?
No. I think what we're talking about in pretty much every presentation that I do is that we're talking about how best we can deal as humans with other humans. I don't talk about pets. So when we talk about dealing with other humans, what we want to do is to be as good as we can be at communicating, at understanding, at being able to be a help and a support for each other. That's what we want to do for our kids as they're growing up. That's what we want to do for our teachers. That's what we want to do for our baseball team. That's what we want to do with our chorus. That's what we want to do with our band. We all want to be able to communicate effectively, support when needed, promote the development and independence of these people. That's what we want to do. Yes, it's the same thing that we want to do with our partners. The stakes are different. The stakes are different. We have the overlay of when we're talking about our partner. I will absolutely get your question in a second. The overlay is different. We have the expectation sometimes that this is going to be easier than it is. And so we get dragged through a lot of different emotions from the emotions of other people, and we have to deal with them differently. We have to understand them differently, and we have to be able to communicate them to ourselves, articulate them differently, and then be able to understand and communicate them with our partner differently. Does that make sense? So yeah, no, it's a really, really, really good point. Okay, yes?
I took that to mean that we should talk to our partners the way we talk to our kids. And maybe I'm oversimplifying, but I think that there's an expectation that your partner knows all this stuff and your kids don't. And so what do you suggest in those circumstances?
When we talked about family with neurotypical kids and neurodiverse kids, one of the key things that we can do in that family is to educate everybody in the family so that everybody is dealing with the feelings and the experiences of what's going on in the family with a similar information base. And so if we're talking about two people, one of whom has come to a different place in understanding the best way to communicate with one another in a friction-filled situation, then it's important that when you pick the right time, whenever that was up there, to be able to talk about that using iTalk. You know what? It's really hard for me. It's really hard for me when I'm frustrated and I hear accusations and I hear things that make me feel as though I'm to blame. Me. You're using I talk as opposed to you talk. That could have been said, I feel upset when you blame me for doing this and you try to blah, 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 all that stuff. So if one person knows that and does it, that's a really good thing. That person in this conversation can emerge from that conversation feeling better. Remember when we talked about reinforcing incremental changes? If I choose to communicate differently with my partner, and I am successful to a degree in having that communication go well, I can feel good about that regardless of whether or not my partner has locked on to that particular situation. I'm modeling it first. And then if there's an opportunity to talk about how the conversations can be difficult and we can help with that education to the other side, or maybe ask questions to the other person to see if they can maybe understand things differently, that's a good thing. But the first thing we do, if we're the only one who understands it first, that's okay. We can model it, okay? Without being kind of supercilious, if that's the right word, and superior when you do that, because then you'd be accused of using your psychologist voice, and that's not fun. Did that answer, sort of? Okay. All right, on to the feelings, blah, blah, blah. Pick the best time to talk. You know, this is what we talk about when we're talking with our kids too. It's the same thing as talking with our parents. The less heat, the better. When we're really angry and we really have no access to those feelings because the anger is too deep to be able to scratch off, may not be the best time to expect that we're going to engage in a communication that's going to be effective. Okay? Sometimes you need to vent, and understand that it's a vent. It's not part of the problem-solving things. It's a vent thing. And when you're going to be venting at this point, announce it. You know, I'm just venting right now, but, and then do it. And the other person newly enlightened is going to understand that, yeah, you're letting go some of the blanket feeling of the frustration that you're feeling from one thing or another. Okay? So the less heat, the better. The fewer words, the better. I have a lot of words, and sometimes I have too many words. And one of the examples of that I had is that I was talking with a kid once, and I had the words. I articulated what I wanted to say about this really complex issue for this kid, and I nailed it. I nailed it. And I wanted to make sure that the kid got it. And I said, okay, that was a lot of words that I just used. Can you tell me back what I just said? And he said, did you know that you have one gray hair in your mustache? That's the God's honest truth. And I said, okay, less words. Let me chunk it differently and use less words. So, and that's a long time ago because there's no black hair in the mustache anymore. The fewer eyes, the better. Kids are really affected by conflict between parents. That is the biggest duh that I've ever said, but it's true. There are going to be times in vivo that we're going to feel strongly, that we're going to want to correct, that we are going to want to discuss and to engage. When the kids are there, it is best if we can wait for a time when the kids are not there and not hearing. Kids hear and they absorb feelings, even if they're not absorbing content, and that can be kind of destabilizing for our kids. And so there are going to be times that that's going to happen. You're not going to punish yourself for that, but as long as it's good to be motivated to avoid those times whenever we can. Yes, makes sense? Okay, the lower the volume, the better. Yeah, keeping our voices low. And if we find that our partner's voice is getting higher, it's probably good for ours to stay even. Again, with the idea that sometimes in a discussion like this, modeling is a good technique to use. Okay, clearly identify the problem to be able to talk with your partner about what the issue is. If the issue is about having the neurodiverse kid contribute to the family chores or those sorts of things, have that be the problem that you focus on, rather than when are you going to allow this kid to do something independent and to grow and to be mature. That may be an overriding feeling that you have. To start with that may not promote the best conversation, okay? Focus on the problem, identify that first, and then hopefully that can, when you come to making a plan, you can talk about how we're gonna help independence. Yes?
I'm asking for a friend.
Yes.
What have you ever heard of if a kid is increasing the volume, right? You're saying the lower the volume, the better. But if the kid is at a ridiculously loud volume, and then as a parent, you match that volume because you know the kid's not going to like it. And the kid starts screaming, I don't like that, I don't like that. And then you stop and you say, well, I don't like it either. Again, asking for a friend. I don't like it either when you do it. And then that gets the kid to kind of like snap out of it. What is the trauma that you're doing to that kid? That's the approach you're taking.
I think that's a tool that you should have in your toolbox when you're dealing with kids. I think we are a better engager in these conversations when we can be the model for the positive as opposed to matching the negative. That said, there may be a time when all else fails, and when you match that volume, it can be startling to the kids, and when they're startled, then you may be able to ratchet it down. It isn't a technique that I would use on a regular basis. It would be one that I would use sparingly, but one that you have. Does that make anybody else have comments about that? Yes.
Behavior therapy. So we learn how to not to raise the voice, or the kid have to calm down. Take 30 minutes and come back and we talk. So that's it actually lower their anxiety level
Mm-hmm.
and not cause that friction and triggering to
Yeah.
the whole family.
Right. And I think that that's a really good plan. I think what we were talking about as something where if the kid is not lowering the volume, no matter what a good model you are, or however you can talk about what the feeling explosion is, that the engine is already lit and this is going up really, really fast, can you sometimes use a startle thing with just your word, with the volume of your words to get things? Sometimes that could work. Not a steady diet of it, not something that you're going to want to use all the time. Right. Yes. Yeah. Can I just wait 1 second? The microphone's right behind you and then it's going to come your way. Yes.
Yeah, I think it's really tricky because I have an older son whose response to like the lower voice would be extreme irritation. He's up here, he's all frustrated, and then you're trying to meet with like such a calm that is almost intolerable because he wants to get the rise. So I think it is important to like model the regulation, and also sometimes it just irritates the kid.
Yeah, right. It can irritate him too. And I think we could also, if we want to, as we were talking about, if we're encouraging this way for parents to talk with one another, to be able to talk with the kids about one another, it says, you know what? I'm hearing more angry and frustration right now than I'm hearing what you're saying. It's easier for me to understand what the problem is if the volume is not 12. 6 works for me. But, at this point, I'm just hearing frustration and anger. And if the kid wants to really communicate, maybe the kid, fingers crossed, like for everything, maybe that's going to be one of the things that we can try. Is that okay for that? Okay. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Because for me, it's true. And I've got, a kid who is just lost it in my office, and, so I can't, deny it. I'm just going to say, I can't wait till you can talk at a lower volume so I can really understand what's going on here. Because right now, all I'm hearing is just like Niagara Falls of anger. It works. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. Good. I'm glad. Yes. Yes.
Yes. I have a young adult. She's 21. ADHD that still has emotional regulation issues. During middle school and high school, I guess between the hormones and those issues, she was really out of control, like angry, like just so easily. And it was all directed mostly to me because I was the main person dealing with that. And for the most part, I tried to just not escalate and just not respond to the anger and to the blame and to the really horrible, mean things she said. But my biggest regrets were the times where I escalated and I matched her or went close. And when she was calling me a cunt, I called her a bitch. And it's my biggest regrets. I still feel like we have repair to do over all the times that I lost it and matched her and went. And, when she attacked me, I attacked her back. Those were my worst moments. And I really regret them. Like I said, I feel like I still have repair to do on that relationship. I mean, from the years of that.
Yeah.
So if I could do it over again, I would do more therapy, more support outside, and figure out ways to deal with that anger without responding and without matching her. And walking away and de-escalating, trying to do more of that because I regret it.
Sure. Yeah. Does anybody have anything to say about that before I do? Last time I checked, you're a human being. Is that correct? Human beings are not perfect. When we're under stress and when we are feeling all those red words that we had a couple of slides ago, inadequate, exasperated, all of those things, sometimes it's hard to take that anger thing off. And we express it and it's anger. And we lose it. And we match the fury that is coming at us. The fact that you now regret those things tells me that we're a lot of times when you didn't do that, that you were more even in your response and were able to manage the expression of the feeling. I'm sure you were getting really angry when she was saying all these things, and you were managing that well. That you didn't do it perfectly, yeah, and that you're even thinking back on that. That's good for you. Good for you. You can't erase those times, but what you can do is what you're doing is learning from that and say, okay, I have a tendency to do this sometimes. I don't like looking back on that. I'm going to really try to, whenever I can, manage these feelings better. That makes sense? Okay. That's what I think. Yes? Anything else? Okay, talk about observables rather than opinions. Talk about the things that you are seeing and that you're witnessing, particularly when you're talking about interactions that you've seen, that you're curious about why the particular response was that way, or are there other different ways? Talk about the things that you see as opposed to your feelings about whether or not you think that there was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do. Make sense, yes? Staying calm. How about that for the perfect next slide? Staying calm breeds being calm on the other side, okay? Create a solution-oriented plan. Articulate the parent-team goal. What do we want for this kid at this stage? And you want to make these, we did another whole thing of the Italians. We talked about sort of responding to incremental changes. So make your goals. And make your goals not that they're, what you're going to be is a perfect kid. No, that's not going to happen. What I want you to be able to do is to be able to accept when I tell you that it's time to go to bed. I want you to be able to, accept that without a blow up. Okay, congratulations, that's great. And then we'll talk about you actually doing it at the right time. But first thing is that. So parent team goal, we want to help our kid be more independent. We want to help our kid be a better contributor. We want to help our kid be able to interact with his siblings and have it be conflict-free for 15 seconds, and then maybe go up to a minute, and then maybe go up to 5 minutes, and those things, okay? Brainstorm possible solution, anticipate possible snags. Understand that the solutions that we come up with are not going to be perfect out of the gate, that there are going to be times that they're going to work, there are going to be times that they're not going to work. We have to be the parenting scientists to be able to say, you know what? It's working more than it's not working. So I think we continue with it. Or do you want to tweak it? Or those conversations are valuable to have. Agree on a time for a progress check. Maybe we'll do this for a week and then we'll see. And engage the kids whenever we can. Engage the kids with that. How do you think it's been going? How do you think it's been going? Oh, I think it's a stupid idea. Well, you may think it's a stupid idea. Here's what I've noticed. This is what I've observed. I've observed that my blood isn't boiling after you go to bed, which tells me that it's been better. Bedtimes have been better for whatever reason, because you're responding differently, that you're complying with time expectations, all those things. Okay? Assess the process and adjust as needed. That's the sort of thing that we do. Let it go for a bit and then do it. And frustration does not equal failure. Remember, we're successful people. We are not used to not experiencing success. And so when we get frustrated, when things aren't moving as quickly as we want, that's going to feel frustrating, but it doesn't mean that we failed, okay? I believe that this is the last slide. And if the talk doesn't go as planned, okay, really important to avoid the blame game. Eddie Moore at school, whenever kids were getting in a conflict and blaming one another, he said, whenever you point your finger this way, you've got 3 pointing back at you. So understand that there is stuff that we are both contributing to this issue. Identify the sticking points and where this conversation isn't going well, and let's think about that while we're taking a break from this conversation that's not going well and just got derailed, and we are opting out of it. We're taking a time out and let that go that way, and then we're going to think about it and maybe do something better about that. And you know what, to be honest with you, we may think about things to make this chat better, and by thinking about it, it sort of deflates it a little bit, and it's not so much an issue once we think about it and we put our mind to it when we're not in the middle of fractious conversation. Make plans for the next talk, you know. And this is like, yeah, okay, let's talk on Thursday night. That's not going to happen. When there is a time and you say, should we talk about that thing now? And the answer may be no, and that's okay. That's okay. Just have the goal of finding a time to let this go. And congratulate yourself for yeoman effort to work things out. This is not easy. That's why we're talking about this. Because parenting is a challenge. Parenting kids with neurodiversity is a challenge. Parenting kids with a neurodiverse kid and a kid who's neurotypical is a challenge. Being able to learn a different way to communicate with our parenting partner is different because it's a different language. There are some themes that are similar, but it's a different language that we need to learn. And it's a process that can be frustrating. And I think that means we're done. Thank you. You guys are great to come. Appreciate it. Any questions?
I wanted to say something before
Yeah.
questions. So what I didn't say before, for those of you who are new here, is that as a matter of course, we send a copy of the video out to everybody, and then all of our videos are posted on our website. So all of the videos that Dave has done before and that everybody else has done before are available for you guys to see. There's a ton of stuff on ADD and for older kids as well as for little kids. Also, the presentation itself is on the website under materials. So I saw, a lot of people were taking photos of the slides and stuff. But if you want to, share the presentation or the video with your spouse or whomever, it's all there for you.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. Thanks again. Yes.
Not necessarily about the partnership, but parenting a child who, I have a child who's at the Southport School, and he's on his third year there.
Yeah.
And it's been incredible and amazing. And so that additional support, we've seen so many great improvements in all areas of his confidence and ability to tackle things. But one thing that sticks is like, just when you can't find a solution to a reoccurring thing like homework, whether it's like, okay, we'll have the snack before screens, we'll do the homework, or we'll take the break, or you feel like you've tried all the things. Yeah. It's like, what is behind that when a child is having trouble initiating a difficult or boring task? Like, what is it that, I think it's like you said, when you can educate yourself, it helps open the doors to like different strategies. But I think that's really hard to understand, like what, and my son is really good at verbalizing and like saying, so he'll even say, I was going to do it, but then when you told me to do it, now I'm not going to.
I'm not going to do it for you.
Yeah. And yet, like, if you don't tell him to do it, he's also not going to do it.
And what do you think are some of the things that underlie his avoiding to do the homework? Yes. Yes. Yep. Yep. Yeah. 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 All the questions that, of course, you're going to have. There could be a variety of different things. The first thing, talk to the advisor. Who's the advisor? Julie Powell. Okay, Julie will know whether or not the work that he's getting is challenging, the level of the work. If the level of the work is really challenging, and you're talking about a kid who's coming home and he's tired, then you might want to say, I don't know what else it is, but he's really resisting doing this work. Can we look at the level of skill that we're looking at? You can also look at time. If he's really, really tired, maybe he's one of those kids that needs to do his work right when he comes home from school. When, as much as he might find that distasteful, you can talk about what you've observed, and that when we wait till after dinner, we have boxing gloves on because we're just fighting each other about the homework all the time. And it's not so much fun for me. What are some possible solutions we can do for this? And he might come up with, I'm not going to do my homework. Yeah, that's not one of these solutions. But talk about, is timing right? Do you want to do it in 2 different parts? You want to do 15 minutes now and then 15 minutes before dinner, 15 minutes after dinner? Have him be engaged in the process of finding the solution is going to be good for that. And if he said, well, I was going to do my work until you told me to, and then, screw you, I'm not going to do my work now. I said, okay, what I've observed is that when I don't remind you, the work doesn't get done. And when I do remind you, the work doesn't get done. So where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? And so just sort of, it is not really unusual. One of the things that we do say to parents, though, that for a time is we from the school perspective, don't want homework to get in the way of the relationship that you have with your kid. So if you're girding yourself from 3:30 until 7, knowing that this is going to be a Donnybrook every time it comes to doing homework, that's just not good. Julie will talk with him and say, what your responsibility is? To come to school with your work done. If you don't, these are the times that we're going to have you get this work done, because it's really important for your teachers to see that you can do things independently. So it'll be during juice break and during after lunch recess and those sorts of things. Those are the times. But then take it off of your shoulders. So, no, it's not worth it. It's not worth battling with your kid about that. That's my philosophy. In an independent school for kids who have learning disabilities for other people, it may not be the philosophy of schools outside of that. But yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.